Hello folks, part 3 from chapter 9, just finishing up with those work papers. So notice once we're collecting all this thing, then our job basically is to identify leads to investigate. Okay, so this is done in a number of different ways. You're looking for patterns. Notice, like I mentioned before, new payees or vendors. And you're going to have to explore them. And this is where the software comes in real handy, because to notice patterns on an Excel spreadsheet without the aid of a computer is really hard to do. And then at the end, you have to draw some conclusions from the records and graphs, and then those are what you're going to wind up investigating. Okay? So, we've been talking about evidence. What constitutes evidence? What are the typical things we see? And notice we got the act, concealment, and the conversion. Okay, so this is the whole process of the fraud here. So again, documents, bank records, invigilation, looking before and after. We're going to take a look at one of those in just a minute. Interviewing and interrogation. We're going to talk about the differences between the two. Surveillance and covert operations. Oh my God, sounds like we're going to do I Spy a little bit. Confidential information and informants. By the way, this is big. This is usually somebody winds up getting caught, somebody reports it. Okay? Somebody reports some suspicious thing. That's typically how people get caught. We're going to talk about CTRs, SARs, and FinCEN 8300. CTRs are currency transaction report. SARs are suspicious activity report. FinCEN 8300 is another requirement we'll take a look at. Email, dying to other physical evidence. So there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different places we can find this evidence. Okay. So the first one, we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these documents. Okay. Documentary evidence, notice it's the backbone. What do the documents say? The backbone of investigations. Okay. Invariably, there's a document somewhere that proves something happened, whether it was money being transferred, money being shuttled through to the wrong account. Notice, sometimes more reliable than eyewitnesses. Eyewitness accounts, you think you saw something, you're not 100% sure. People change, even eyewitnesses change over time, what their recollection is. Notice, if there is an actual physical document, there is the potential for fingerprints, okay, provided it was handled properly, which is a problem. So you have to be careful with handling documents. Right? You could spoil them by handling them without gloves and things like this. And again, provides evidence related to all three of these items. Okay? Bank and credit card statement. Again, this is kind of pretty common sense. Follow the money. Where did it come from? Where did it go to? Transactions. Who's being paid? Scrutinized. I mean, this is how a number of different fraudulent things can be caught. Who's being paid? And then, it also, the idea of conversion. When you're busy trying to decide, so you have the act, you have concealment, and conversion. Conversion is really where you improve. Well, conversion and concealment are both. But when somebody actually converts it, now they've actually tried to benefit. Okay. They've tried to benefit from it. You might conceal an error that you made that you don't benefit from. So you could have concealment without fraud. But once you've tried to convert something, then you're pretty sure it's going to be fraud. Okay. Clues to lifestyle. You have somebody making $50,000 a year that lives in a $500,000 house. Now, is it possible? Yes. Could they have gotten money from rich uncle or something? Or yes, it's true. It can happen. But by investigation, you can figure out how it happened. Invigilation. We're going to take a good look at this. This is the periods before, during, and after. Okay, so the idea here of invigilation has to do with, we're going to take a look before, during, and after, and then usually a pattern will develop. Notice changes in patterns. And by seeing that pattern, it's evidence that an act actually occurred. And you can sort of figure out, you can calculate how much money was missing. So to give an example here, let's take a look at it. Okay, so this is we're looking at Jim right here. Prior to Jim being hired, so here were shortages. So this was the actual amount, this was the expected amount. Okay, and you could see during when Jim was employed, look at what happens here. The estimated overage or shortage. So notice here, 47, then 39. So if you take a look, you see what the average is here, and then actual 29. Look at the amount of money potentially missing here, right? All of a sudden, when Jim was there, look at these shortages, okay? And then after Jim, so Jim gets hired, it's initially short. I mean, it's initially within range. Then after, it's within range. So this is good. This is good, and this is good. Then what happens, it looks somewhere like around 2004, Jim cooked up an idea, and look at that pattern. Then Jim leaves after Jim, and look what happens. This shows Jim probably up to no good. Okay, can't say for certain yet, but it sure does look that way, doesn't it? Okay. Now, interviewing and interrogation. Interrogation is when you now have a principal suspect. Interviewing is when you're talking to people to collect information. Notice again, we're talking legally here. It's normally in a deposition. I've actually been in a few depositions in my lifetime, and it's not fun, but I was not the guilty party, or they were investigating something else. But they're using it to find and discover evidence, okay? And for all three items, act, concealment, and conversion. Interrogation is what happens when now you're looking at you've honed in on a principle. Okay, right? Somebody that's definitely of interest. So it changes the pattern, how aggressive you are as well. Okay. Surveillance and covert operations. Again, this is you'd have to be very careful. I don't think most accounting people should be out there on surveillance. They have other people do that. They're gathering evidence, engaged in illegal activities. You know, I don't think most of us are built to this, but you have people that do this kind of thing, co-conspirators. So you can read all these different items conducted by private investigators or law enforcement, not accountants. Unless you happen to be, you're an accountant working for the FBI, in which case you're both an agent and an accountant. But notice that this is something done professionally. Okay, there's all different kinds of things: mobile surveillance, fixed point surveillance. Again, not for your typical accountant type. Confidential sources. By the way, this is typically where your first indication comes from. Confidential sources or informants. Okay. Sources have no criminal involvement. Okay. Now notice, informants, the difference between the two. Sources have no criminal involvement. So sources have no criminal involvement. Informants typically do have either direct or indirect involvement. Okay. So informants means they know about it because they were part of it, where a source is not part of it. Okay. Notice, usually confidential. And you always have to take a look, especially for informants. Why are they informing? Okay. So, I mean, you can go and take a look. As a matter of fact, my same last name, Cohen, the guy, the attorney for Donald Trump. He was an informant. Why? He was involved in a lot of things that he was talking about. And again, reliability and validity. Are they just trying to save their own skin? Or, well, which they probably are. But is the information they're giving you still reliable and still valid? All right, folks, that's part 3. We'll be back with part 4 in just a moment.